They thought the town was empty, but it was watching. It began with silence. The kind of silence that's so complete you can hear your own blood pumping. The town of Graven Hollow had no phone signal, no rumble of distant cars, no chirping of birds. There was only the fog, thick, unmoving, and cold as bone. It wasn't a weather phenomenon. It was a presence. 5 strangers arrived, each pulled to this forgotten place by a different thread of fate. There was a journalist, a man who chased myths for a living, now caught in one. A priest, his faith fractured, seeking a redemption he wasn't sure he deserved. A woman, her eyes haunted, running from a past that galloped behind her like a phantom steed. A boy who never spoke, his silence a heavy cloak. And finally, a man who claimed he had died once and came back wrong. They were strangers, islands of desperation in a sea of mist. They didn't know each other, but the town knew them intimately. The fog didn't just obscure their vision. It clung to their skin like a damp shroud, chilling them to their very marrow. The buildings of Graven Hollow stood intact, eerily preserved. Houses, shops, a church steeple, piercing the gray veil. But the windows were all wrong. They weren't shattered or dusty. They were black, smooth, like polished obsidian, reflecting nothing but their own terrified faces. It felt less like they were looking in, and more like something was looking out. They weren't windows, they were eyes. Then the first monster appeared. It didn't announce itself with a roar or a crash. It simply coalesced in the middle of the main street, a silent, dreadful punctuation mark in the suffocating stillness. It stood there, staring directly at the journalist. Its body wasn't made of flesh or bone. It was composed of paper. Old, yellowed news clippings, bold headlines, retracted articles. Every lie he had ever printed, every half-truth he had ever peddled for a byline, woven together into a shambling humanoid form. The thing's whisper was the rustle of 1,000 turning pages. "You wrote me," it breathed, the words forming from the ink on its chest. "Now read what you buried." The journalist turned and ran, his heart hammering against his ribs. But you can't outrun the fog when it's already inside you. The priest, driven by an instinct he hadn't felt in years, sought refuge in the town's church. The air inside was colder than the street, stagnant with the scent of dust and forgotten prayers. With trembling hands, he lit a candle on the altar, a small act of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The flame flickered to life, a tiny orange beacon. Then it turned black. The light didn't die. It was corrupted, twisting into a spire of pure shadow that absorbed the warmth from the room. From the darkest corners of the nave, a creature began to crawl. It moved with a disjointed, spidery gait, its form a blasphemy of sacred things. Its slick, pale skin was grotesquely stitched together with rosary beads, the crucifixes dangling like gruesome charms. Its eyes were 2 empty communion chalices, vacant and bottomless. It dragged itself towards the altar, its voice a venomous hiss that slithered through the holy silence. "You prayed to forget the sins you absolved in others, but never yourself," it hissed. "But I remember every single one." The priest let out a scream that was swallowed by the oppressive quiet. The candle exploded, showering the pews in black wax. And from the ancient wood, a dark, viscous liquid began to bleed. Outside, the fog thickened, pressing against the stained glass windows like a curious beast. Meanwhile, the woman who was running from her past found her old house. Or rather, it found her. The one she had abandoned years ago, the one that haunted her waking thoughts and waking nightmares. The front door creaked open on its own, a silent, solemn invitation into her personal hell. Inside, everything was as she remembered, preserved under a layer of dust and regret. In the upstairs bedroom, a crib stood waiting, empty, cold. a monument to a memory she had tried to burn. Then she heard it, a soft, wet, crawling sound from within the walls. Plaster dust trickled to the floor as something moved behind it. A creature emerged, tearing through the floral wallpaper like a monstrous birth. Its limbs were a tangled mess of old, discolored baby blankets, knotted and twisted into unnatural shapes. Its face was a mirror, shattered and reassembled, reflecting a distorted, screaming version of her own. It didn't speak. It sobbed, a sound of infinite, abandoned grief. "You left me," the sobs seemed to say. "But I never left you." The woman collapsed, her strength finally deserting her. But the mirror-faced monster didn't vanish. It crawled closer, forcing her to look, to see what she had done, to see the reflection of her ultimate sin. A silent boy wandered aimlessly. He didn't speak, but the town spoke to him. Whispers followed him everywhere. They rose from the drains in the street, slithered from the cracks in the pavement, and coiled down from the skeletal branches of the trees. They were the voices he had locked away, the words he refused to say, now given form by this malevolent place. Then his monster came. It was a tall, spindly thing, but its most horrifying feature was its head. It had no mouth, no nose, no eyes. It was covered, completely, in ears. Thousands of them, of all shapes and sizes, twitching and turning, straining to hear. The creature knelt before the boy, its posture one of desperate supplication. Its voice was not a sound, but a thought implanted directly into his mind. "Speak," it begged, a chorus of unheard pleas. "Say the word. The one you saw, the one you carry. Speak, so I can finally forget." The pressure built, the whispers grew to a roar in his mind, and for the first time in 10 years, the boy opened his mouth and screamed. And the fog, the entire town, screamed back with him. The man who died stood in the graveyard, a fitting place. He looked at the rows of weathered tombstones, and a cold dread, colder than the grave he once occupied, settled in his soul. His name was on every single one. Every marker bore his name, with different dates, different epitaphs. Beloved husband, fallen soldier, lost son, 1,000 possible lives, all ending here. Then, the ground before his own supposed grave began to tremble. Earth churned and split open, not revealing a coffin, but a dark, gaping maw. A creature rose from that profane opening, a mockery of the human form. It was made of his own bones, crudely stitched together with strips of his own skin. It had his face, but not his eyes. Its eyes burned with a cold, resentful fire. "You escaped death," it growled, its voice the sound of grinding stone. "But I stayed. I took your place in the dirt." The man braced himself. They fought, 2 halves of a whole, one who lived and one who was left behind. But the fog was a conscious entity, and it had already chosen its side. Finally, the 5 strangers were drawn to the town square. Battered, terrified, and stripped of their defenses, they stumbled into the open space, the clock tower looming over them like a judge. The fog swirled in, closing off the streets, trapping them. Their personal monsters emerged from the mist, circling them like sharks. The paper man, the rosary horror, the mirror-faced memory, the listener, and the graveyard double. The hunt was over. But there was no final attack. The monsters stopped, and the fog itself spoke, its voice a collective whisper of all the souls the town had ever known. "You were never strangers," it said, the words echoing not in their ears, but in their minds. "You are all just pieces of the same terrible lie." The truth, more horrifying than any monster, descended upon them. The journalist who wrote the lie. The priest who buried the truth with false comfort. The woman who lost everything because of it. The boy who saw it happen and was silenced. And the man who was supposed to be the victim. They weren't visitors in a haunted town. The town wasn't haunted at all. It was a memory. A scar on the face of reality, a pocket of space-time where a single awful moment was left to fester. And they were the ghosts, doomed to forever relive the sin that bound them all together. If this story chilled your spine and made you question what's hiding in your own fog, then subscribe to Truths Untold. We delve into more haunting tales, emotional twists, and monsters that speak louder than words. Like this video, share it, and comment below. Because some towns never forget, and some truths never, ever die. Thanks for watching.